Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. It's Mollie Carmichael here with 2023 Consumer Trends, and we're going to talk a lot about where we think products going to go, some of our consumer trends, demographically, migration trends, and all that goes with that. So let's dive right in. Before we begin, real quickly, as you all know, we have a huge team, East to West Coast, here to help you on all things from product segmentation, typical market studies, land residual analysis, master plan, you name it. We also have upcoming events. Don't forget to check us out on zondahome.com on our events section. And Enterprise 2.0 is released. If you don't know about that, please reach out to our team. We've updated the master plan community profiles, the top 100 CBSA market reports, and integrated access to the new home trends. It's a ton stronger. Check that out as well. Zonda Virtual, if you're not familiar with it, we have one of the best teams on the virtual reality side. So whether it's interactive floor plans you need, site maps, just all things digital as it relates to your sales office or online sales office, please reach out to us there. And then last but not least, if you're not familiar with Livable, please reach out to Karen Bonder. It's a new home listing platform that you'll want to be a part of. It's free to list, and it's outrageous what they're doing with Livable. It's going to be super cool. So stay close to that as well. So let's dive into today's content. We're going to talk about your top consumers in 2023 and 24, product trends by generation, and top trends for 2023 and 24. But we're going to start out first with we're going to look at really what the top trends are. And I'm going to go a little backwards here. But I want to talk about the top trends and then how to apply it. So first, last but not least, as you guys know, the number one thing consumers are looking for today, this is based on over 60,000 people who have taken the survey. Location's number one, home design is number two. And that was really the big surprise to me as I started doing this way back when. And then price is number three. In all markets across the country, it stays in those top three. The other ones do move around, but home design has always been number two. The very, very price sensitive markets, the most price sensitive markets is when you really start to see price and home design rival each other. But pretty consistently across the country, we're seeing that trend. Where do they want that home design and what does that mean? That's always the big question I get first, which is it's interior first. And it's about function and not size. You'll actually see larges on the bottom as it relates to sort of their top preferences there. So again, it's really about that interior design. And that does tend to be more with a new home shopper and buyer. The resale consumer will tend to buy price first and remodel later. As we look to big obstacles today, the biggest obstacles are, as all of you know, affordability. We've seen interest rates fluctuate up from 3 to 4%, now back down to more like 3%, but they're creeping up once again. And the translation to home price and monthly payment is about 50%. So it's pretty significant. And as it relates to home price, the translation the last time I checked it, which was last week, is about 32% in whole price. So some pretty significant differences there. And again, going back to that top motivation, that's really why understanding the current product trends, what's going on in home design, all that stuff, what's going to trigger them to make a decision when rates are creeping up and they're just a little bit more sensitive to buying. And frankly, you don't want to give away price constantly. So let's take a look at that. So we're going to talk about first the top home trends, then we're going to go into kitchen, and then I'm even going to touch on just lightly master bath. But we're going to hit each one of those trends. And so there's a lot here. So stay with me. So starting first, sustainable design and eco-friendly materials, that's huge. Just all things green and friendly is just becoming bigger and bigger. And you're going to see why that's going to be an even bigger trend as we get to not just, everybody's pocketbooks, but as we get to these younger generations, it really becomes even more sensitive as they become home buyers. So smart technology, all things inside and out, that's really an expectation. When you look at things like the metaverse and how that's really evolving into the home today, again, it's really going to change, I think, the way that we live. The continued emphasis to indoor outdoor living, that's been a big trend for a very long time. That's not going away. In fact, I believe that's going to actually continue to be an even bigger trend as spaces get smaller. And we're really trying to make that small space feel bigger. And that's where that indoor outdoor relationship and glass will play a big impact on that. And like the great Eichler designs, there's so many homes that were designed in that sort of 1,200 to 2,400 square feet. Those homes feel so much bigger because of that glass and the relationship there. Even when you look at Boxable, they took into consideration that indoor outdoor space and why it's 400 square feet, and they're making that 400 square feet feel much larger. It's such an interesting floor plan. I'm so fascinated by how well this will do as they get this off the ground. Custom thought out choices. So we do know it's over 70% of consumers today. As much as they want to be a home designer, we're not all born with that natural interior design talent. So giving them those thought out choices and different sort of packages to choose from and making that choice simple and easy. One of the biggest reasons you can lose a consumer to a resale versus a new home is they're overwhelmed by the choice, and two, they're concerned how much it's really going to cost them to get all those choices in there. So those packages, and we're seeing so much more of that out there, can really help. But there is still for that high-end buyer that wants to have individual choice as well. So give them that flexibility as well. Modern farmhouse. Wow, has that been a top trend, and it continues to be a top trend. I know like 3 or 4 years ago, it's the big question out there was, are we going to see this trend out? I'm going to say a big exclamation no. And it continues to trend up even higher and higher. And part of it is it's fresh, it's white, you've got natural materials, it makes small spaces feel larger, but still very much on trend and will stay with us in 2023. Master suite with spa-like features. Certainly, we're definitely seeing utility space actually shrink as we're trying to get more affordable spaces, but the master suite is still very important. In fact, it's over 70% actually still want to have that master bathtub. And over the age of 55, it's just over 50% that still wants to have that master bathtub. So making that space flexible and usable and functional while still getting those spa-like features, very important. Well-designed kitchens, logically speaking, kitchen's the #1 place in the home that consumers actually look to, want to be around, they socialize around it. It is the heart of the home. So making sure that's right. And we have an entire section that we're going to talk about kitchens specifically. But again, something seamless, clean lines, and making those spaces feel nice and large. Storage is huge today, and particularly if we're trying to actually get more functional condensed space. Just things like in the kitchen, again, large walk-in closets, any way you can actually make those spaces feel bigger and more functional is huge. Even just those little sort of hidden sections that are that awkward space between the bathtub and the cabinet, or the cabinet and the wall, if you can actually make more space like this, even taking spaces like, under the stair and making those more functional. Again, use everything you can to give them more function and use within the home. You'll actually see there's a big focus on really changing how the home lives. And can you actually take multifunctional spaces and do multifunctional uses with that? And how does that work? And of course, planning for pets. We saw through COVID a huge increase in pets in the home. And so making not only a pet, but the number of pets work in your home is a really big deal, says the person who now has 3 dogs. Ridiculous. But even just having sort of that gated area without it looking like a horrible gated area, or again, little places where the dogs can actually, be quarantined too, but comfortable, a really big deal. And again, I always look to what Tesla did, and we'll talk a little bit about that. So these are things that exceed expectations. Like, how can you actually sort of bring extra, sort of outside the ordinary things that they're looking for, as opposed to the expectations we just went through? So, how do you get like an office to work and still be able to have privacy? Again, doing conference calls or Zooms like this without having any noise. Just simple things like the glass enclosures I'm seeing so much more of. I just walked a model where I saw this actually on a dining room that was converted to an office, and it really looked fantastic. So here's an example of actually a living room with that same enclosure on it, and just a way to create privacy or convert that space for a multifunctional space. Um, Another area is just the passive house. We're seeing a lot more of not only that sustainability, but net zero ready features. So not fully net zero, but all the features that if they want to take it to that level, they can. So beyond solar, solar today, over 50% of consumers actually want it and will pay for it. And we do, with all of the changes happening out there, we continue to see that increase, especially now that consumers are really seeing the financial benefits of it. Use of light to make smaller spaces feel large. We just talked about this earlier, but when you look at, again, sort of that Eigler-esque feel, they took very small spaces, threw lots of glass off the back of the wall, at the back of the home, and it just makes such a difference. And here's, that's a great example of it. This is a great example of it. Again, a small space that just feels fantastic. More accessibility. You're going to see some of the trends we have as we get into who your consumer is, just how significant this is going to be in the next 10 years. I just walked a bunch of active adult homes, 55 plus, and I was shocked how little there was in the universal design side, or just things like thresholds or lower countertops in certain categories. It's really going to be, I think, critical in the design of the future. This is something a builder is doing up in Seattle, where literally the cabinets, you open up the cabinets and out pops, where you store your plates and glasses and things like that. So whether you're a smaller person or accessibly, you need that accessible design, it just really can make a difference. Looking at the bathrooms as it relates to accessible design, again, not everybody loves. I remember working with Del Webb, and the average consumer does not necessarily want, the pulls up or any of that stuff, but just knowing that they have that, or the easy access or no threshold going into the shower, just simple things that you can do with countertops that still look great. This is a beautiful design that a developer did in Palm Springs, and just really a lovely look, but again, really nice, accessible design. Threshold going into the house. I know there's no great way to do this. I just saw this picture and thought, hey, this is a great way to look at it. And I realized there are moisture barriers and all of those things that protect the home, and there's reasons we have that extra step coming in. But again, just walking several 55 plus homes recently, I think I walked up 4 steps to then walk up the next step to then walk into the front door. There's got to be a better way. So just, again, bringing that up, and you're going to see why that's so important when we go through the consumer stuff. Health and wellness. I've talked a lot about this in past webinars. There's such a huge focus now, not just in the residential world, commercial, but as you're looking at your clubs and you're looking at those recreational areas, even in transportation, as you're looking to have different vehicles taking people back and forth, I just think it's so important to be thinking about the clean air, air filtration, whole house water. The numbers there are definitely there to support paying for it. I try not to plug too many different groups on these webinars, but check out Delos. I continue to be impressed with what they do in this category. I love this. This is actually right off their website. And how could you deprive that beautiful little baby of clean air, clean water throughout your whole house? And just little sort of reinforcements like this. This is a reason to choose a new home. over that resale you might be considering, or frankly, even staying in the home that you're in. And so I love what they said here, which is home sweet home is anything but traditional anymore, with living spaces now acting as offices, classrooms, gyms, and places for celebration. It's time to ensure that they're supporting health and well-being too. So what a great way to market your homes and sell the features you've got. It's about, again, whether you're working at home, living at home, but sleep, performance, your respiratory, all that stuff. And again, your skin is the largest organ on your body. So all those things are easy to sell and well worth sharing. The next one, of course, multi-generational housing. It's such a huge opportunity. Close to half of consumers say they want to support parents potentially in their next home, or a 21-plus-year-old child still living with them or may live with them in the future. With home prices rising as much as they are, I suspect that's going to continue. And when you look at life expectancies, we're going to continue to see more doubling up of elderly parents when you look at the cost of that. Even boxable, the ADU unit, I know like in Washington, Oregon, California, we're seeing so much of the ADU concept kind of coming into play. Of course, I use boxable as the example, but that's going to continue to be a much bigger play in the future, not only adding more units, but just more space and more functionality. The number one thing that we found in multi-generational spaces or these ADU units, most people still use them as a guest or an office, but it was just the opportunity that they knew they had that security financially, that they could rent that one day if they needed it. So it just gave them kind of financial security. The other one is just new tech savvy storage solutions. So I'm going to show you something kind of fun. It's a little off the beaten path, and I'm not certain you can actually sell these features within the homes. They certainly could be options, but this is something super fun. If you haven't seen this, it's actually bumblebee-spaces.com. But it literally, I'm going to just click on, let's see if I can get to this without totally blowing this entire webinar. But you can see here, it's one large space, but you can start to show how some of these different solutions just kind of come back and forth. So again, you can see this now turning into a bedroom, but it's taking small spaces, making them more functional. And I love just the two words, live different. I think we need so much more of that in home building today. So let me see if I can get out of this without completely blowing this. Let's go back. I did it. Brilliant. Okay. Thank you. So again, just more tech savvy storage solutions, kind of different ways to look at that to show consumers how they can live. And then metaverse engagement. This is something that really intrigues me. I have one of my sons who actually just moved back. He's going back to college to do a different degree in journalism. And one of the things that I was fascinated by is just how he looks at the whole metaverse and how it's more than just game playing today. I mean, it's work, it's school, it's purchasing things, it's everything. And I really believe when we look at Gen Z, of which he's a part of, we're going to really start to see just a different way to live. And that's going to change the way we look at space. Or the question is, can it change the way you look at design? So when you look at things like the office environment, or when you look at things like home and how that lives at home, I mean, will we see a change in actually spaces? And how does that evolve over time? Or how can we make an impact as the new home designers out there for home in the future? So let's look at some of the top kitchen trends. Obviously, we want kitchens as big as we can get them, but we also really want functionality. The kitchen is the heart of the home. And so things like large countertops and multi-use spaces is important, but also transitioning from utility where that space really feels like a place to live. I hate sitting in my family room and looking at my kitchen because I feel like I'm constantly in need of reorganizing it, but I'm a little OCD for sure. So clean spaces, seamless spaces, I think continue to evolve, and we're going to see much more of that sort of clean, seamless space. Energy efficient and Bluetooth appliances. I mean, all things more functional. Again, as we continue to evolve with technology in our homes, any way we can actually make life easier, better, faster. Remember, technology is not about technology, it's about time and life. It's making sort of easier choices and being able to spend the time where you really want to spend it. Lots of storage. So I love this solution. I hate opening the cabinet under the sink and all the stuff falling out. So being smart about that storage, left and right of the sink, that's really easy to put your kind of appliance storage or your, cleaner storage and things like that. At the walk-in pantry, more than just a walk-in pantry, but almost where you actually stack all those appliances instead of having them all over your counters, but also having places to put, all the other stuff that you keep in your pantry. Open floor plans for larger homes, but I'm also going to say that's really a luxury for a larger home, and really figuring out, once again, if I'm going to do the smaller floor plan, how do I make the galley kitchen actually work too? So smaller homes, the galley kitchen tends to work super well. And for those larger homes, again, having that nice big open floor plan actually makes a lot of sense. I've been seeing a lot of the galley kitchens show up a lot in some of the more recent films. And I'm curious about, how that's going to evolve over time, because it really does sort of stifle how you use space. Albeit it's still very much wanted, very much popular, and I constantly hear the words open floor plan in our consumer research. Island with lots of seating, of course, that's logical, particularly in spaces where the nook doesn't quite work. Just you can actually wrap that around with seating and it can serve as the nook, of course, and the island. High quality materials, mixing sort of marbles and woods together certainly is very important, but obviously clean surfaces and how that applies to healthy living, I don't think that gets pointed out nearly as much. And as we mentioned, the appliance garage, between the air fryer, the magic pot, and now they just continue to evolve all these new appliances. And let's throw in the coffee maker, and then there's now the soda maker for the water, and the toaster oven, and don't forget the pizza oven. So all that stuff, if you can actually create a space to make that clean, simple, and easy, I would move just to get that. That's amazing. Another great space in the kitchen, instead of having that desk where all the stuff collects and gathers, creating little sort of quick office spaces and spaces where you can actually easily store stuff. We're going to talk a little bit about that and storage. More tech integration. There are so many cool things coming as it relates to tech. So this is an appliance that GE has where you can actually, you can be cooking, it can be the iPad in the kitchen, but it's amazing what's going on with some of these appliances. So this is actually an extraction fan. It actually is a large touch screen. It has 2 cameras for video chat if you want to chat while you're cooking. It's got smart home integration, Philips Hue connectivity, and Google Assistant. It's incredible. You can watch Netflix while you're cooking. You can check out the calendar. You can have your chores for the week. It's pretty neat. And oh, by the way, it is a 4-speed fan. Yeah, so there's all kinds of things, a light underneath, you name it. This is actually KitchenAid's a smart oven. So again, if you're cooking, all the recipes can be there or help you to cook. You've got Samsung's, of course, the refrigerator that so many of you have seen with smart home organization. LG now has the one where if you're at the grocery store, you literally can click a button, see everything that's in your grocery store. If you think you had butter, you'll know you had butter. But all this stuff, I think, pointing it out, having that functional, showing how their life's going to be better because you thought through all that stuff, I think is huge. Increased focus on sustainability. I mean, all things, not just sustainability in materials and things like that, but even sustainability of food, multifunctional spaces in the kitchen. Again, this is a great example of how you can actually move that countertop back and forth, have storage just underneath that, in addition to the typical storage you have there. But again, this is a great way. I know so many people that say, I just work on my island now. How do you store all the stuff that goes with that when they're working, or kids even just doing homework, things like that, that make it super easy. So a greater emphasis on health and wellness. I mean, how you're setting up that kitchen for sort of healthy living. So whether it's the appliances, whether it's the countertop surface material, whether it's the design of the kitchen, all those things, the more and more you can actually point out how it's going to improve sort of their health and wellness. We talked about this previously with home design, but this is kind of that accessible design and just ergonomically correct. I mean, it totally makes sense to me that the dishwasher is raised a little bit higher. I mean, this is a great design. And as you're doing dishes, as opposed to leaning down every time you load the dishwasher, this is a great design. It looks good. But thinking through some of these things, this is really popular with the 55 plus consumer, as long as you've got the space in the kitchen, and that really is the key. So increased use of natural lights and natural and eco-friendly products. So all of that stuff, I think, really can make a difference in how the kitchen lives, how a family room lives, all of that. So you guys have seen so much of that. The future of master bath, this is actually a design that Mike Woodley did a couple of years ago. And I thought this was amazing. They did a bathtub, and you have that goofy 5-yard setback that nobody uses that ends up being dead space. And instead they put a sliding glass wall on this. And what a great way to get a spa-like feature in a small amount of space. Look how efficient this master bathroom is, but what a wow it is. So big things for master bath, obviously spa-like features, large counters, just space that you can use, I think is huge. Lots of storage. The walk-in closet is a deal killer if you don't have a great walk-in closet. It's not a space I would skimp on. It is function for them, a huge amount of their function. I'd make the master bedroom smaller to get the master closet to be functional and large enough. Natural light, of course, high-end finishes. Heated floors, I'm shocked how well heated floors rated, even in warmer climates. So heated floors and the heated towel bars, such a luxury as you're looking to sort of do something different and special, a really big deal. And then, of course, smart technology integration. So now how do we apply it? So we just went through all these big trends that are happening right now. We talked about the essential ones. We talked about the ones that sort of exceed expectation. When do you use them? Who's moving? Where are they moving to? What's most important? Do they all want it? We're going to talk a little bit about that. So as I mentioned to you before, I'm doing this a little backwards. So now we're going to talk about the consumer. And I want to emphasize it really is all about them. Today's consumer for sure, it's boomers and Gen Y largely. And why is that? Gen Y is getting married and having babies. And of course, the boomers are now finally, I think, 57 and now looking at retirement or in retirement mode. So a great setup as it relates to demographics. And we're going to talk a little bit about them specifically and where they're moving and some of that stuff. So current life stages, top life stages, you're going to see, again, if you look at this, it's really 43% family, 26% mature couples, 11% young couples. And then we've got roughly about 20% single, and 4% of those actually do have children. Why are boomers ready to retire? I mean, it really comes down to age group. So as we talked about it, it's 57 to 76 right now. And you'll see that the average age for retirement is about 62 to 68 years of age. And a lot of that has to do with really how Social Security benefits are set up, but in addition to just average age for retirement. as we look to the growth throughout the US, so I did a huge deep dive into this. That's a whole nother presentation sort of on where migration is going, who's going where. You can see by region nationally, you can see where the growth is and where the decline is. So I want to pause on this for a moment. And as you look to this, you're going to see a lot of the growth happening in Gen Y, and then a lot of that happening in the boomers. But look at the numbers for the boomers. It's a huge number. And then look at the loss for Gen X. So we're seeing a huge increase in retirement, and a lot of that increase is above the age of 65 today. So when we talk about accessibility, multi-generational housing, all of that stuff, I would really be thinking about how you can make that more interesting and exciting, because it is definitely on the bubble. And then Gen Y, a huge increase in these younger families, growing families, and frankly, strapped budgets and trying to make every dollar work. How do I get sort of more functionality for them? And where we could see, where we will see a decline is really where we've seen move up tradition happen, or more of that mature family, executive family, demographic seems to be falling. And you're going to see why Gen X hasn't quite had the same sort of robust income and net worth as the boomers anyways. So there's going to be some shifts, I think, in that sort of luxury, mature family world, but perform well, and you'll still win if you do something different. Last but not least, I want to point out the fact that we really have room to bring home size down. So what this is a double axis chart from 1960 to 2022. You'll actually see average household size is in blue. And in 1960, it was 3.3, and the average home size was 1275. Fast forward all the way to 2022, and the average home size is almost 2,500 square feet, and we have almost one less per person. So we've shrunken household size, and the home size has literally pretty much doubled. So again, as we continue to look at these growing families, smaller household sizes, huge retiree group out there, what do we do? I think there is room for sure to bring home size down if you do it well and right. Last but not least, I wanted to actually show you the numbers in the different parts of those regions. And I did them by these age groups. 27 to 42 is in blue. So the biggest growth for starter affordable family for housing you're going to see is in Texas, and then obviously in the Southwest and California and out in Florida. And interestingly enough, for California and Florida, it doesn't make total sense, but in California, they're just having to move inland to stay if they want to stay, and that's where they're going for affordable housing. And in Florida, same thing. It's really interesting to look when you get down to the block group, which we've done a ton of work on. It's pretty fascinating to see where that growth is. When we look at the next biggest group, or the boomer generation, or move downs, you'll see mature singles and mature couples. Obviously, the biggest growth is in the Southeast, followed by Midwest has the biggest numbers, but those numbers are moving to Florida, the Southeast, but there's still a huge opportunity in the Midwest with the right products. Not everybody wants to leave the home that they raised their kids and their families in. So huge opportunity there. Northeast, I'd say the same thing, but so many want to cash out that equity, and they still come down to the Southeast and Florida too, as you all know, but also other opportunities kind of moving up to Maine and the Portland area and some of those areas as well. The biggest losses are in that move up mature family. Again, luxury, California getting hit the hardest, then followed by Florida, and then of course the Northwest. So now let's look at how you apply some of it. So we looked at sort of who's growing, boomers, obviously families. Let's look at how you would apply some of those trends. So for the boomer consumer, they have a huge amount of wealth, by the way. So over 50% of the wealth in the country. Debt, it's going down, which is great. Well, poor Gen X is going up. And so, they're living high on the hog and luxury features. And again, these big, beautiful spaces. You'll actually see there's two choices for them. Some of them will cash out and they want that nest egg and that financial security. And that looks more like this. This is a Del Webb community. And so many, and this is the largest active adult developer in the country today still. And financial security and lifestyle is a big part of what they sell. And then you've got, builders going after sort of the luxury play like Toll Brothers with their active adult model. And it's pretty spectacular and selling some really amazing features like this. The other big thing for the active adult consumer is, pets. Ritz-Carlton paying attention to this demographic, this consumer that has a lot of money and wants to bring their pets with them everywhere. Everywhere you go in the Ritz-Carlton, they accommodate pets. So it's pretty amazing. And, look at what Tesla's done with pets. I mean, they have a feature that, you run into the store, you can hit the pet button and it sets the temperature, plays music, and lets anybody walking by know these pets are well taken care of. But when we look at even the accessibility piece of this and the multi-generational piece of this, 85% of consumers today want to age in their community over the age of 65, for sure. 1 in 5 of those households provides care to an elderly or disabled person today. They're projecting by 2030, it could be 1 in 2. So think about that when you're looking at the accessibility design and the trends we talked about in the very beginning. Almost half of today's seniors want to modify their current home, but that's really difficult. And so you can do a reverse mortgage and take money out to change it, or if you've got savings or whatever, but usually that's not what that consumer wants to do. They tend to leave and go somewhere else because they have to, and they're cashing out that financial security. We're set up today to where we actually can age in place so much better than ever with, Amazon Fresh and Uber and Amazon. So we are set up for so much more aging in place and multi-generational living. And I think you're going to see so much more of that. The other big focus, I think, for this consumer is just health and wellness. Longevity and living the best life they can is so important to them, and they don't want to leave that existing home. So the more and more you can integrate into that, that's their goal. More 55 plus consumers today would actually stay in their existing home if they could, but they also would like to stay in a great location if they can't. And so what that can mean in some cases is going vertical, as opposed to keeping that 1-story home that they would have to move an hour to 3 hours out for. So getting that elevator right is a pretty big deal. So there are so many new styles of elevators. I would tell you the elevator that has not been too successful is the one that feels like you're walking into a coat closet and you might die if you get stuck in it. For this one is an awesome elevator. And yes, it's a little bit more expensive. I think when I saw this at IBS, it was a $60,000 elevator, which it's glass and you can see through it. The typical elevators that is like the coat closet is usually in that $20,000 to $30,000 range. So just to give you some perspective, what I've seen actually in resale value with homes that have had elevators in great locations, it could be as much as a 10% premium to their home purchase price, or $100,000 to $120,000 in home price. It just gives that consumer the sanity that they can live their whole life there. So that's a big reason why it's so, successful. Gen X, today, you're actually going to see that consumer has about 27% of the U.S. wealth. They actually have more debt, and their debt has recently been growing. Now, this is a generation that unfortunately got hit the hardest by the last Great Recession, as many sort of referenced. And so they didn't quite have the same earning years that the boomers had. And as a result of that, they have less wealth. But the other part to this too is Gen X is also much more likely to want to accommodate their parents living with them and their older 21-plus-year-old children. And so that's a part of that sort of wealth lack of accumulation, if you will, as well. But success for Gen X is also keeping their family together. And so they're the most likely to buy a multi-generational home. They also really rely on control for their family and control of their finances, destiny, and so forth. So things like, the Tesla home battery is most popular with Gen X and also very popular with the boomer buyer as well. And even things like having that ADU unit, they're more likely to actually add that ADU unit and try to age in place or have parents come with them too. Now moving on to Gen Y and taking all those trends, what would you apply there? Gen Y really defines their success by the amount of time they can spend with their family and sort of the unique time that they can spend with their family. So number one for them is time with family, then outdoor fitness activities, and then in private away from it all. Gen Y represents one of the most educated generations led by women. This generation awfully gets, labeled the spoiled generation. They were spoiled for sure, but they also, got a great education out of it and definitely seeing some bright shining stars today. They're smart, they're striving for more, and they definitely can and will command work-life balance. Almost half of Gen Y workers today insist on working remote at home. And so that idea of having the home office, giving them work-life balance with their families, this is a huge deal. So 1 in 3 consumers wants more than 2 offices at home, for example, making that home super functional. They were born with a phone in their hand almost, but really just making life easier, better, more efficient. They'll do circles around you when it comes to stuff like this. Even down to appliances in the kitchen, making sure that you're selling those benefits. I can't tell you how many livability stays I do on individual floor plans. And this customer will say, God, they didn't even tell me that, my appliances were Bluetooth. I was so excited when I turned my phone on and my entire phone lit up with Samsung as an example. That's another very interesting thing here. This generation is more likely to prefer a Samsung over a GE or a Whirlpool based on some of our recent stats. They're more likely to want entertainment features like the wet bar because they're at home more. They're landlocked with kids. Now moving on to Gen Z, and these are just some examples on applying some of the top trends that we talked about. With Gen Z, they're really in rent mode today. On average, it's about 1% of consumer shopping for a home is actually under the age of 25. So this consumer isn't there yet. For the most part, it's about 1%, but they're coming for sure. Their whole entire life is just completely immersed in social media. It's how they do everything from shopping, buying, selling, hanging out with their friends, and even if instead of watching TV, they're usually staring at their phones. Most likely to play an active role in saving the environment and major social issues because they can. They don't know life without being involved in every big issue out there because they're constantly reading about it on their phones. Life is more simple for them. They're more likely to actually take a simple home today. But as they continue to evolve, it'll be really interesting to see their preferences in home over time. They're more likely to actually move towards the all-electric home. As we continue to see the car, strive with success, the electric car that came out was sort of do we have to? And now it's more than likely in the next 5 years, most consumers, if they don't already have one, see themselves with an electric car. It's over 80% of consumers that want that electric hookup in their garage, as an example. So that's going to continue to evolve, and we suspect all things in home are going to continue to push towards electric, or let's say be less negative than it has been in the past. It is still today, 80% of consumers still want gas in their home, despite some of the crazy gas prices we've seen. But even things like even potentially not having a car one day, Gen Z definitely wants a car. They definitely are driving. There was a lot of debate as to whether or not They would drive as much as Gen Y, but certainly we're seeing those numbers rise quite a bit. But this is a community that was designed in Arizona, cul-de-sac, that has no cars, actually. No car potential, in other words, there's no garage or any sort of support for cars. But this generation is the most likely to reinvent, I think, how we live. So again, applying sort of their look at the metaverse and how they live more virtually. I mean, do they go to the gym, or is the gym part of their room? Even when we look at hotel experiences for this generation, would you ever consider actually this as a hotel? This is actually it's called City Hub in Copenhagen, and it's self-service human cabins that if you want to travel all through Europe, this is a very easy way to stay. It's private, and you literally virtually choose it. You get your cabin, stay there, and pack and go on to your next destination. So again, just a lot of unique and very different ways to look at where we're going. And as you apply that metaverse, I mean, imagine what that means for home. Can they have smaller spaces? What does their social hub look like? How does home live for them? And I'm not suggesting we're all going to move into a virtual world as it relates to home. It just provides more choices, right? So as we wrap up for sort of top opportunities, and we're looking at different regions, these are kind of my ratings for the regions as a whole. Texas, still number one. I know there's a lot of incentives and things like that that are getting worked through in Texas. But when you look at the demographics and the migration trends and the demographic that they're capturing, it's still pretty stellar. Florida is number two, certainly with all of that migration coming from the Northeast, Midwest, continuing to come there. And that demographic is just ripe. Then moving to the Southwest, and there's two kind of big centers there. You've got Arizona and Vegas, albeit they're struggling today. It's a huge magnet for California to cash out, and that's going to continue to be a magnet as that equity releases. And then you've got Denver and Utah that are huge magnets for those younger profiles, and their parents are following. So that's going to be a huge one. Then moving to the Southeast, which Southeast and Southwest, I'd say they almost rival each other, but the Carolinas are certainly a magnet for both the move down buyer and those young families. Atlanta continues to be a huge back office to the East Coast, and a growing market as well. And then moving over to California, there is a ton of wealth there. And if people would stop moving out, they lost about 500,000 people last year. But if they can afford to stay, it's certainly a great place to live. And you have quite a few people still moving up, moving down, and moving across. Moving up to the Northeast, it looks a lot like California, a ton of wealth, a ton of opportunity to stay. And if they can, they will. But there's a lot of people, cashing out to move. The Northwest is just an amazing place to live, beautiful to live, but still a lot of development to come. Idaho has been a huge magnet for the move down buyer. Again, there's been a lot of stress in that market, but I suspect it's going to continue to recover, and you're going to see that move down buyer continue to come. And Seattle with, a huge job market, Oregon, a fantastic lifestyle, will continue to attract. And then the poor Midwest, it just comes down to, frankly, weather conditions. It's super affordable to live. The net worth or wealth in like Minnesota, Wisconsin, it's staggering. So there's tons of opportunity there, but I think there's tons of opportunity also to create some pretty unique and awesome master plans and new home development there as well. Because for some reason, they're losing a lot of people as well to Florida, the Southeast, and different parts. So there's definitely still opportunity there. So as it relates to the consumer, affordable new homes for today's growing households, obviously 27 to 42. Homes that will attract that discretionary consumer, tons of wealth there in the 58 to 76 age groups. Financially secure options like Del Webb, they're still going to be huge. The Villages, fastest selling master plan, it's very similar to the Del Webb concept. And then unique opportunities and luxury experiences. Capturing that net worth, either great locations with a new kind of lifestyle or coming up with something unique and different, even in that longer destination move. Move up homes typically designed for consumers in the 43 to 57 will be on the decline. So be aware of that over the next 5 years. It doesn't mean that there was an opportunity there, but it is interesting to look at those homes that those boomers might be moving from. There'll be an excess supply of that in addition to the fact that that demographic is declining over the next 5 years. It's something to pay attention to. So with that, we are 10 minutes early, so I want to thank everybody for joining us. We covered the top trends, kind of the must-haves, and where we see, exceeding expectation for the next year. We talked about where the growth is, where it's going to, and then we applied it to those different generations and some examples, but hopefully that was helpful to you. And if we can help you in any way, it's certainly been an adverse time over this last 6 to 9 months, and we are here to help. So if you have any questions, let me know. You can email me. I did put all of my info here, or you can throw any questions in the chat, and we're happy to take questions at this time. So somebody said, love the smart home technology. We have a GE smart hub in our model home. We built it into a coastal farmhouse design. It came out so cool. So Cheryl, if you tell me where that is, I'd love to see it. So thanks for sharing that. And then we got a great share. Again, you guys, thank you so much for joining us. If you have any questions, you have my contact information, and we have a whole team here to help. Take care and have a great day.